My name is Vincent Cannady, and I am the President of Disabled Students in Higher Education. I am a doctoral student here at UMKC, so I am a bit of an oxymoron because there's not too many disabled PhD students. Actually, I think I'm the only one. I started Disabled Students in Higher Education 3 years ago here at UMKC campus. We've then constituted a national chapter, and we're trying to get our locations at either Jewel College or MU or some other universities. And one of our missions is to actually increase enrollment for disabled students in higher education. We try to get involved with local schools here, but that takes a bit of approval from government. One of the things that we've recently faced is adversity in the idea of a disabled student council. We started asking for a disabled student council in August of 2012. And that student council was to represent 1 in 6 of UMKC students are disabled. It's a known fact. That's a census data from 2010. And so statistically, there's about 2,300 disabled students at UMKC because UMKC does not actually keep an accurate census. And what I mean by accurate census is they have a disabled student services department for, as Deborah mentioned, accommodations. But accommodations are, in general, mental. Like as she mentioned, I have an accommodation because I suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder that I gained as a veteran services in the military. And I get time and a half in a quiet room, which never actually works out to be a quiet room. And part of that, the history of it, is that UMKC only looks at disability services as to what they use for So with that in mind, we tried to get UMKC to give us all the disabled parking permits for students, which would actually show a greater reflection of disabled students because it's a mobility disability that does not come up in disability services. And this is why we know that there's at least 2,000 disabled students at UMKC because I've actually been in classes with people who have one arm, but they're not counted for disability services, but of course they're disabled. So to get an accurate number, you would need, say, the veterans information for Chapter 31 veterans, which is I am, or you would use state vocational rehabilitation, which puts students at UMKC and who are not coming under the veteran system, so they're not counted as well. And so we actually represent one of the largest demographics at UMKC other than race. But disability transcends all of that. There are African American disabled people, lesbian, gay, transgender, they are white, they're any nationality, there's going to be a disabled person. I like to say that if there are green people in the United States, there's at least one disabled green person. And so when you look at that fact, for the fact that we don't have the adequate fellowships, scholarships, or jobs. If you go around UMKC and look for a disabled student assistant, there aren't any. Matter of fact, since I've started talking with UNews, or UMKC News, we've got now a new email came out where they've got their first program for disabled internships. But there's so many hoops that most students won't go through them to actually get the internship. One of the biggest problems with being a disabled person is the stigma that is attached. It's, for lack of a better term, it's almost like coming out, okay? Because you have to put yourself in the hands of a professor who has limitations, and he thinks that that's giving you an unfair advantage. But life as a disabled person is an unfair disadvantage. So to ask to follow federal guidelines, I don't see where the problem is, but one of the big things we had was UMKC's disability services changed the rules. Now it is up to the professor where you get your accommodation, which is a big deal because they can say you have to go into their office, and their office they got 25 GTAs running around there, and it's not a quiet room. And I myself experienced that. I've been given a computer that's an Optiplex, which is 12 years old. And so DSHE, on that matter, we've registered for a conference that's coming up in San Diego for March 20th. It's our first travel to represent UMKC. We actually received a scholarship because we've done some national work with senators in Congress. Last year and the year before, we went to Washington, D.C. We met with 5 senator and congressional aides because it was in the middle of the whole farm bill where the SNAP was on there, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And so we could actually get the senators. But some of our proposals literally made it into the farm bill. Okay, so we've had right just from this little cube, which we fought for 2 years to get. For a year and a half, we met in the library. If we couldn't reserve the presentation room, we met downstairs in the middle of all the students. We were not accepted. And I think there's a general misconception that disabled people cost the university money. But that's not true, because when you fill out a FAFSA, which is your financial aid, you tell them in there that you're disabled. They actually give UMKC more money for you than what you would have gotten if you were not disabled, to cover for certain things like health, and you may need health care. And so we're not a detriment to the university. What we want is fair and equal treatment. We want to be not the only, we're going to be the last demographic added to Student Government Association. And that's not 100% given. There's a vote on Monday, March 10th in the SGA chambers where they're voting on our resolution. And if they vote down our resolution, then we literally have to go to the federal government to force acceptance. And that's not something that disabled students want. We don't want to fight, we just want acceptance. We want fair treatment. We want jobs. Well, we're granted the resolution, but that's still not 100% passing. What happens next is a vote to the students, which is why we're doing this interview. We're pleading with the students to recognize our right to exist and to be on UMKC campus. So we put that out, and the thing is, which is pretty good, is if there's 200 students out of 14,000 that vote, then that's what they count. Then it goes to the students then approve the resolution, and then it comes back to the SGA where we get the final vote that the students have approved it. And I actually watched history in the last SGA meeting. I was there when the Veterans Student Council representative took his seat and voted on his first vote. And the emotion was, was hard for me, because I was glad, I was celebrating as a veteran that the veterans have made it. We finally made it at UMKC. But as I made them realize that there's even a sub-classification under the veterans, because we have disabled veterans, which is, UMKC told me that we only had 10 disabled veterans attending UMKC. I'm like, not true, because I know at least 10. And if I know at least 10, then there are 10 more. And that's the law of statistics. So there's an underrepresentation there. And so, like I said, the final phase would be that vote, with, where they say that the resolution was approved by SGA and the resolution was approved by students. Now we vote to seat the representative. From there, we are actually going to push for enrollment, an increase in enrollment, to have the UMKC petition for federal funds to get programs. We're going to go after grants for programs so that we can educate high schoolers. And see, one of the problems is that the Kansas City region itself is unaccredited, is disaccredited, and the only school that these disabled students can come to is UMKC, because UMKC is the only school that's recognizing their academic history. They can't go anywhere else. So if we don't go looking for them, they're going to fall by the wayside, because they can't go nowhere else but UMKC. So that's our primary mission, is to go from, we submitted a Freedom of Information request where we asked for, how many students are in disability services. Well, 2 years ago, it was 411, and I probably knew all of them. And this year, there's 286. So we lost 140 students who were looking for accommodations, who petitioned for the accommodations. And that's a phenomenal number. That's a third of students. Now, in fairness to UMKC, I know a lot of them who did graduate. But the unfairness part is none of them came back for a professional degree. But what we are going to do is we're going to hit the private sector looking for funding for scholarships and fellowships. Disabled Students in Higher Education, the national chapter, started a foundation called Disabled Students Foundation. And what we are trying to do is to get a 501c3. And from that, we need a sister organization to adopt us. And once we get that adoption, we're going to be able to go to companies like Block, H&R Block, which does a lot of sponsoring for education here. We've already approached the Kauffman Foundation, not Muriel, but I think Ewing, the other foundation for educational funding. And so we have inroads there. So once we have the legitimacy of a student council that has an annual budget that can actually put people out on the street, that can actually use UMKC's 501c3 status to be able to get funds that will benefit UMKC, because any funds that come in automatically get split with UMKC. So it's a win-win for UMKC, because with us out there increasing enrollment, that means higher tuition, higher amounts of students who get tuition. We will also be able to circumvent a lot of ADA laws that we are now not in compliance with. And so there's an ADA being American Disabilities Act of 1993. We are not in compliance with certain acts of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and mainly that is the loss of enrollment, okay? Because UMKC is not placing priority, I would say. They've done things because we've been in their face, and we don't want to be. We want to be one of the accepted students. We want to have an event the same way the LGBTQIA Council had. An event that had 1,000 people, 10,000 people. Well, when DSHE had our first event, we had 7 people. That's because we couldn't get the chancellor to come. We couldn't get the vice chancellor to come give us a speech, and he's disabled. So if the vice chancellor of student affairs, who's disabled, will not support us, how can we go anywhere? And so in that matter, they've changed a certain thing. Now, last week, DSHE received an email from the President Pro Tem, Amy Johnson of the SGA. And there was a workaround that they offered us. They said, well, we don't know if we can accept you into the SGA, which is another matter, okay? But we have the new Vice Chancellor's Council. And so DSHE's response was, will we be able to vote on issues that affect all students, not just disabled students? And the answer was no. And so DSHE, and I have to admit, I did it without a vote, responded, no, that we do not want anything that does not give us the same rights as every other demographic at UMKC. And that is a seat on the council. I'm characterizing the whole hierarchy when we submit a request to have the chancellor come speak to us, no response. When we ask to have actually, no, that's not true. Did get a response, too busy. When we asked for the vice chancellor to come speak with us, a response, too busy. And the only other positive response we had was from the basketball team's coach. And he wanted to come speak with us because he wanted us to have a booth at the UMKC games to show that they supported disabled students. And so, they offered to co-sponsor events with us. Athletics at UMKC actually would like us to do a Special Olympics type of an event. So out of all the administration, the athletics has been the most awesomest to us. And that was before they got the new director. As far as student affairs and student involvement, no budget. DSHE has applied for budgets 3 years in a row. We have received $0 as a budget. The only money that UMKC have invested in DSHE, Disabled Students in Higher Education, is the Vice Chancellor, Mel Tyler, gave us $500 for the event that was a flop, that no one would come speak at. The SGA gave us $500 for an event that we couldn't run because they didn't give us the money until it was too late. We lost the reservations. So we were given after 3 years of applying for travel funds, for traveling for an annual budget, of asking for to belong to a student council. See, our push to have our own student council stemmed from the fact that we asked to belong to the medical school, and their response was, well, hold on, your members come from all disciplines, so that you come under no council. We was like, well, what about the Institute of Health since we're disabled? No, your members are registered as different majors. So they were responding to the fact that Mademba Diak is an economist. I'm a historian. And Isha Irfan is a chemical and biology major. So because of that, we were denied a home council. So to the point where the only response is, okay, now give us our own council. Well, what I plan on doing is not being a representative myself. It seems that I must be what they call an agitator. And so I wanted to offer, pretty much as much as the Veterans President did, he put another representative there. So I plan on getting someone that's less confrontational, who will vote with their heart, but who will stand up for disabled rights, who won't be a pushover, but who won't be me. Because I look at things as a point of civil rights. Everything that I do from DSHE's standpoint of view is federal law. You have to have this many enrollment, you have to put this much funds invested in us, you have to give us our accommodations. If you are finding work for other students, international, gay, straight, white, black, then you have to do it for disabled students as well. When I've looked at posters at UMKC, and one website, one poster have I seen someone in a wheelchair. And I actually knew that person that was in the wheelchair. And we are losing one of the best people that I've ever worked with, Heather Tice, who's very active, but she's gonna graduate, and she's having a hard time getting back into UMKC as a professional student. She lost her master's degree program and had to go to Masters of Social Work. It's so many things that we have through adversity that people don't think about. We don't even have a disabled student counselor, like LGBTQIA students or veterans. Veterans have a counselor. There's no counselor to tell us, okay, you should take these courses. They're easier for you. Let's try to convince UMKC to open up the PACE program to have a disability portion of the PACE program, so that some students who have, say, PTSD, who have a problem being around other students, can take online. You know, there's things that could be done, technological, that could change the whole enrollment for UMKC. We could be enrolling students who live in Iowa who are disabled, if we use technology correctly, which is one of the reasons why DSHE is going to this international conference on technology for persons with disability in San Diego, sponsored by California State University. And this conference is the biggest in the world, and it's going to have all the technology that UMKC could use to help us enroll these students. I mean, Blackboard is a great tool. I think it could be better, but as far as for disabled students, if we could have, say, a video conferencing the way we used to have, if a professor just turned on Blackboard with video conferencing, it doesn't have to be an online course. But for a disabled person, there it is, okay? Because he's got his lecture. You can raise your hand on Blackboard and answer a question. You can put it up on the screen. There's things that could be done to improve the life. We have a deaf member who can't get back into pharmacy school because UMKC won't give her what's called CART, which is a captioning tool, with a translator, which is an ASL sign language translator. So you have a choice between one or two accommodations instead of a combination of both. So there's certain little things that we could push for, and I don't like the word push, we could ask for. And as a council, we would have more of a vote because we could put it to SGA. And the SGA could then put it to a vote to the students, who would then make it a referendum. And there's nothing that the administration could do about it but fund it. Well, it would be to sponsor a fellowship and scholarship for say 10 disabled students. So we gotta, like the way they do for the Opportunity Fellowship. Now there is an Opportunity Fellowship out there for disabled students, but we compete against minority students and students who have a sexual gender preference. So we're in competition with them. So we want something that's an educational prop just specifically for disabled students. Some money that's raised or given to us by maybe the Alumni Association. What's a good relationship? Actually sitting down and talking to us. Don't learn about our plans by an email. And I think that's what the Vice Chancellor was getting at by starting this Vice Chancellor's Council. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea if there's two separate councils. So there's a Disabled Student Council that's on the SGA, and then there's the Vice Chancellor's Disabled Council. And what the Vice Chancellor's Disabled Council was supposed to do was talk to him about what's going on and what disabled students need. That was UMKC's idea. But our idea was, okay, we want to talk about more than just disabled students, because my daughters aren't disabled. They're going to come to UMKC. So I need to make sure that it's fair for all students. Civil rights is not just for black, white, gay, straight. It's for everyone. Male, female, white, male. It's for everyone. Same thing as civil liberties. And an education is a right in America. As long as we can pay for an education, then we're supposed to get the same education as everyone else. Now, part of federal law states that the schools have to do certain things to make sure it's fair. That you should not be punished for having PTSD. You should not be punished for having to be in a wheelchair or being deaf or being blind. Life is hard enough as a disabled person before you take it to an educational level. We would really like to see UMKC revisit all its undergraduates who are disabled and graduated from UMKC and offer them maybe a scholarship or a fellowship to come back for a graduate school, to maybe give them free GRE tests, something so that they know that UMKC wants them back in the school system. Understanding that we have a 46% retention rate overall, with not being disabled, I understand that that is a challenge, but challenges have to be faced and worked on. And being disabled is a challenge. Coming and asking for things that you shouldn't have to ask for is a challenge. And that's my challenge. That's something that I took on, okay? I was pushed aside when I was going to be a graduate student. I applied, I wanted to be a graduate student. I'm one of the first students that will get all 3 degrees at UMKC, which is very unheard of. And because of me, now the history department has changed its whole structure. They used to have a requirement where you had to have a thesis degree. Well, because I had professors die and I couldn't get my thesis, and they still accept me in the program, and I'm succeeding, they're saying, hey, maybe we should rethink it. So now UMKC's history department is going to drop the thesis requirement and let you just take extra 3 courses that you need to graduate. And they are setting it up so that you can go from undergraduate to master's to a PhD student and spend your whole academic career here at UMKC. Why run students away from UMKC? It's a very good school. I think we get a good quality education. There are some things that needed to be changed, some things that need to be faced. When I was I'm gonna sum this up by saying, one of the things that I had to tell the SGA, there's this thing about calling yourself disabled that the enabled word says is wrong. Don't call yourself disabled. Why did you call your organization Disabled Students in Higher Education? It's not accepted practice. I said, that is fear, okay? When you're disabled, the hardest thing you have to do is face up to your fear. You have to face up to your disability and find a way to make it work for you. There's 1 million disabilities, the same way there's 7 billion people almost. So everyone's disability is different. Just like a person is different. But expecting the same treatment no matter what your disability is, no matter what your sexual orientation is, no matter what color you are, no matter what sex you are. I think that's a normal expectation. I totally supported the LGBTQIA Student Council. I totally support the Veterans Council because veterans are all of those same. They're just like disabled students. They come from all different nationalities, all sexual orientations. So that was an admirable thing that UMKC did. We just want the same thing. In life, disability people aren't born with. There are some people like me who get their disability later in life. There's a chance that one of you may have an auto accident, may discover that you have diabetes, or even lose your hearing. This is for you. The reason why we are here is that maybe in 5 years from now, you want to come back to UMKC. We want it so you can do that, so your kids can do it 20 years from now. So we just need your support right now. Right now is the time to vote for a Disabled Student Council. Not next year, not next month, right now.